That's why I follow them, because I'm like, oh, I wish I could be that blunt with people. Hi, everybody. My name is Kerri Isham. I'm a certified sexual health educator. I have been in the field of sexual health education for 28 years, and the last 15, I have been running my own sexual health consulting business, Power Up Education. I specialize in child sexual abuse prevention, working with children, youth, and adults with disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and also have a keen interest and expertise in the impact of pornography viewing on children and youth.
Okay, Kerri, let's get straight into it. So nice to meet you in almost person.
Thank you.
Technology, right? A little bit of a background. A couple weeks ago, I posted kind of my own experience with SA and COCSA. And it's interesting because your name kept coming up in conversation. So we had a family member who experienced SA. And what we found out was actually one of the kids who was sexually abused found out through your workshop, the Safe Touch workshop. That's how she figured out what was happening to her was not right. And so this is why these conversations are so important, is how do we educate kids on sexual abuse, and how do we keep it age appropriate, and how do we also educate adults, because we are from generations and raised by generations of the shh, shh, put under the rug.
Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is educate adults. We need to educate adults so that they are comfortable talking to their children, their nieces, nephews, grandchildren, the children that they may have in their daycare. So many adults that I meet have so many layers of their own sexual trauma that it becomes almost impossible for them to share healthy, age appropriate information. We need more comfortable adults so kids know that anywhere they go, they would be able to talk to someone that was comfortable receiving, a disclosure, or even just receiving questions about their body and how their body works.
Well, prevention, right? We have a family member who was sexually abused, and the aftermath of that, I don't think people fully understand just the ginormous aftermath in terms of everything from just how many people are affected. It's not just the child that it was affected, the entire family. Then it opens up generational wounds, and it opens up, the difference between the victim and the perpetrator is the perpetrator, especially when it comes to COCSA, child on child, is a lot of people are going to the mom of the child who is abusing children, and offers them sympathy and, oh, I'm sorry this is happening, and like it's not your fault and things like that. And then the victims' families get the stories.
When we talk about child on child sexual harm, I need people to understand the prevalence. There was a study done, it's called the Thorn Report in 2020. The sexual abuse that happens towards children, 70 to 77% of the time, it's from another child. So a person under 18 to another child under 18. When the brain is underdeveloped and the prefrontal cortex is not developed until the mid 20s, people are more likely to act out. They're not thinking about cause and effect as teenagers and things like that. So just because somebody has harmed someone as a youth or a child does not mean that they're going to repeat that behavior as an adult, because often children get labeled like predatory behavior and things like that. My personal opinion is not to label children when they have exhibited these
Right.
behaviors.
Does age come in effect here? Because that's another thing, is like a lot of child on child is age appropriate.
So what we look for, and I'm going to come back to the resources in a second, what we look for is it is very age appropriate or common for little people to explore each other's bodies. And I do have a resource in my shop, powerupeducation.com, and it's a resource called Child Sexual Behavior. And I would want every parent, every principal, every ECE, every primary school teacher, it goes up to grade 4, has 3 columns: natural and healthy curiosity, area of concern, and seek professional help. So in terms of resources for teenagers, I'm going to just share, I just learned about these today, and I have been in the field for 28 years. So I'm pretty excited about this. Happened to be on the same day that we're meeting, so that's pretty amazing. So one of them is called shorespace.org.uk. And it's a safe space for teenagers who are worried about their sexual behaviors. So it's, are you worried about your own or someone else's sexual thoughts, feelings, or actions? We can help. It's backed by young people. It's 100% anonymous, and it's built by experts. They have a chat and email function. Another one is talkingforchange.ca, and they help individuals troubled by their sexual interest or behavior involving children to live a safe, healthy, and non offending life. And they provide help to individuals who are distressed about their attraction to children, individuals concerned about using child sexual abuse materials, normally called child pornography, and individuals worried about engaging in online and offline offending involving children. Another one that I learned about is called Help Wanted, and it's an online course to provide help to individuals who are attracted to younger children. Their goal is to provide tools to support a commitment to living a safe, healthy, and non-offending life. Another one is called What's Okay. I think this is brilliant. The website doesn't say anything about, sexual behavior or anything like that, but it's like, hey, have questions about sexual thoughts, behaviors, and interests. It's okay to ask. So another resource is called Stop It Now. It's stopitnow.org.uk. They have a helpline, a live chat, and then a secure email for people who are concerned about their behavior. If you are concerned about someone's behavior, if you have been sexually harmed by someone, so there's different places to go on the website. So this is very encouraging to me because we're never going to have a shift in behavior just by educating the victims, right? Like we have to educate everybody. And when people have intrusive thoughts about harming children, we need to support them. And sometimes people have a hard time with that. Well, we should just support the victims. But the equation is never going to shift unless we provide support and education to the people who are doing these harmful behaviors.
Well, and do you know the stats on, because a lot of the times these kids that are abusing other kids have also been abused. And so do you know the stats on that?
So that actually isn't true. I think we say that as a way to like reduce shame for people or to feel sorry for someone. The number one reason that youth are harming children or other youth is the viewing of pornography.
Hmm.
So they see it, they for children do not understand what's happening, particularly kids who have had no sexual health education. This is like a nightmare, right? I saw something, I was sexually aroused by it, I have no one to ask questions to, I have a brother or sister or next door neighbor or cousin, and I'm going to do what I saw because as children, that's the only way that they can understand their world is through play.
Hmm.
The reason I say that I do not believe that to be true, well, is 28 years of experience, but also they did a study, three different studies with perpetrators in prison, and they asked them, "Were you sexually abused as a child?" And this is Saltzer, Saltzer, her work. All three studies, about 60 something percent said, yes, I was. Then, when they said, we will be hooking you up to a lie detector test to determine whether what you just said is true. When they put the lie detector test on the probes on these people, it went down to 30%, like 30 something percent. So what we're looking at is 2/3 of individuals were not abused as children and they still harmed other people. In fact, what we know is a lot of people who were sexually harmed as children become the helpers, the teachers, the social workers, the ECE people, the people that actually can make a difference in children's lives. I picture a world, this is my fantasy or my dream. All children are educated,
Hmm.
all parents are educated. When a child does a misstep with their friends and says, hey, do you want to put your mouth on my penis? And the other child said, well, no, I can't do that because that would be breaking the rules of touch because you don't need help wiping or washing and you never even hurt yourself. So please don't ask me that again.
Hmm.
And then everybody moves on.
Right. Let's go to that education piece though for a second, because I know there's the contra. I don't envy you at all, by the way. in the position that you're in, because it's like, where is the line for education? How much is too much education? How much is not enough? And what's age appropriate? And that's such a difficult subject. I know SOGI is so controversial. How do you navigate that, and where is the line?
Well, I mean, in British Columbia, our curriculum is from 2016. The cycles of new curriculum usually come every 10 years. So, somewhere around 2026, I expect there's new curriculum coming. When children ask parents questions or teachers questions, I always encourage them to put it back on the child. So, say if a kid says they're in grade 1, what is sex? And then you can say, that is a great question. What do you think sex means? It means kissing. When people are kissing. And I said, yeah, and that is a part of it. Sometimes the kid's like, can I get a snack? Like they had that one little thing they wanted to be affirmed. You said, yes, that is part of it. And some kids will, well, what else is a part of it? And they may have other questions. So for me, I teach that, kids are like sponges, right? They ask a question, you give it what you feel is an age appropriate response. They're going to soak it up and then they basically leave the rest. So I'm a big fan of, if a child asks a question, particularly if you've done the foundational work, you've talked about it as a family, your child's received sex ed at school. So if you get a grade 4 kid that says, what is anal intercourse? Well, that's not part of the curriculum. But if a kid's going to ask me an anonymous question, I have to make a very split decision about whether I'm answering this to the whole class or if I'm just going to answer it to that one student. But keeping in mind that kids have seen pornography, boys ages 8 to 9 is the average age for viewing right now, girls shortly after that. So when are we going to get real about sexual intercourse or sexual intimacy? Because they're seeing horrific images of degradation, objectification, and we're too timid to talk to them about the penis going in the vagina to show love and affection if you're heterosexual, or to make a baby, like on the rare occasion that you want to make a baby, because it's mostly to show love and affection. So we have this very strange, like, we'll give a kid a phone that has data and can access Wi-Fi, and they will see pornography 100%. And then we don't want to talk to them about, puberty, wet dreams, masturbation, sexual intercourse, oral sex. And we have this weird reaction to it, but yet they're accessing things that they shouldn't be accessing at that age, which becomes extremely confusing.
When it comes to pornography, how do we kind of circle back a little bit and change the way that we expose our children? I mean, I took things to a different level. I brought my kids 7 hours away, and I'm homeschooling them, and I'm trying to protect them in that way. I don't want to completely isolate them from the reality of the world, but where is the limit in terms of parental responsibility behind protecting your kids from seeing pornography at too young of an age to process?
Well, I mean, younger children, the filters are probably the best idea, but also, like, I don't believe that children, and I'm going to get, flack for this, but children really don't need to be on devices until they're 12. And there is a ton of research that supports that. Yes, I understand that kids want to code and things like that, but I'm talking about the difference between monitored use of a device and then unmonitored. The parents are sleeping, the child, has free reign, and there's quite a bit of that going on. We should not be putting kids on video games unless we understand, like, does this have a chat feature? Can my child be talking to strangers? And I would go to Common Sense Media for that source of information, because they write different games and things like that. And it's hard for parents to keep up. Like, I don't blame or shame parents when their child sees pornography or something happens, because we are like literally running a marathon every day trying to keep our kids safer in the world. Maybe what we should be focused on is education and what we can do, rather than trying to like run this race that we're never going to win. Because kids, I mean, if there's a dancing monkey in the corner and they click it, they're going to pornography. If someone in the family has been looking at pornography on the iPad, a pop-up might appear and then they just click on it. There's tons of great video resources on amaze.org, specifically on pornography, that parents can show. I wrote a book with Lindsay Ford of Bread and Clutter, The Things We Can't Unsee, How to Talk to Kids About Pornography. And it's a children's book for ages 8 to 10. And it's just kind of a way in, so that we don't have to be like, hey, have you seen porn? Because every kid's gonna be like, no. But if you say, hey, I heard from this lady, Kerri Isham, or I went to a workshop, did you know some kids are seeing pornography on the bus? And then you just leave it open. And then they'll be like, hey, when I was at so-and-so's birthday party, they showed me pornography. They don't want to tell because they're smart enough to know that the thing that they want to do the most, which is be on their device, is at risk if they report. So as parents, we want to keep that open and just say, pornography is 18 plus.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantasy.
Right.
In real life, your grandma, auntie, uncle, they don't want to participate in sex in that way. Kids
Mm-hmm.
receive this information. They want to hear that, yeah, because teenagers are delaying sexual activity right now. And this came out in the Adolescent Health Survey of 2023. I think it is because of pornography. Who would want to have that done to their body? So kids are delaying, they're waiting.
Well, and I think adults learning about porn too, and learning that, a lot of it is people that are being raped, and there's trafficking. And so it's not real life and what we do in a bedroom, but it's actually people being abused online.
Yeah, pornography, talking about consent is such an important piece. Do you think these people want to be doing this? Yes. How do you know that? They're smiling. Okay. Do you think it's possible that they could be smiling because if they don't get paid? That's interesting. Do you think they might be doing pornography because they are in active addiction and they have to be able to pay for the drugs or alcohol they use? Do you think this person might be doing this job because they didn't have an education that could get them a good paying job and they wanted to go to university, or they have 8 children and so there's many different ways, and none of those reasons are really consensual. It's an act of desperation because they can't get their basic needs met. It is part of the deal of parenting today, is to talk to your kids about sexual health education, is to get educated, is to give examples of when you were growing up. How are things different? Just talk and talk and talk, because if you don't do it, someone else will.
And I think that's what the controversy surrounding soji is about, is parents being like, well, I want to teach my kids and I want them to know what I want them to know. But there should be, a requirement for, if you are going to be educating your kids at home, here's what is age appropriate for what they need to know at this age. Because, off camera, I was talking to you about how, our parents' generations weren't even being told about their periods. And so they would just be bleeding and have no idea what was going on because there was no education.
Well, I mean, I follow the BC Ministry of Education curriculum, and I'm also responsive to what is happening in the world, right? So we don't have sexting as a topic in our curriculum, while children are taking their lives because they've been sextorted. But some of the kids, like, my grown-ups don't even like talking to me about it. I get sent to my room. And those are sometimes the parents that are frustrated with me when I share accurate, up-to-date, factual information that is not based on opinion or values or beliefs of my own, that is just a reflection. Like, all families are different. I don't even know how many times I could say that I said, go home and talk to your grown-ups.
Well, and most of the information they're getting from isn't from their teachers, it's usually from their peers, right? So we can't control really what information other parents are sharing with their kids, and you will learn through your peers. I guess playing the devil's advocate as a parent, I did criminology before I went into broadcasting. And, one of the stats was about, you were talking about interviewing people in prison, and a lot of like serial killers said that a lot of the ideas they got for their killings was from things they saw online. And so when it comes to educating our kids, where is the line there in terms of educating and then giving them ideas on things to do?
It's kind of the whole thing about, like, if you tell kids that you could be, like, being gay is a reality, telling them about people who are gay doesn't make them gay. My belief is that the only way that we're going to make a shift with this is being honest and having real conversations with kids that are age appropriate. And unfortunately, kids need to know things earlier and earlier. Do I want to be the one delivering a workshop to grade sevens about sex trafficking? I do not. Do I need to be accessing kids at that age? I do. Why? Because the average age of entering sex trafficking is 13 and a half. So we have to give them the information ahead of time as a prevention tool. So many adults says like, yeah, my child doesn't know about that. I'm like, but they do.
They probably know more than the adults because, you talk to adults about sex trafficking, like, "Oh, that's just a conspiracy." Do you know what the stats are just here in Nanaimo for sex trafficking? I mean, I've heard whispers. I don't know the actual data on that, but it's concerning, and that people don't think that it's real is also concerning.
This is a strategy and tool that people use, right? So when I did a sex trafficking workshop a couple of years ago, I was asked to create one. I called it Sex Trafficking in Our Backyard. I did that intentionally because it's happening in every city. The strategy that a lot of people use is my child is too young for that, or I don't feel comfortable with that, or that's actually not really happening in our community. It is happening, but when we're not willing to embrace the truth of what is happening in our society today, there is a war against our children. And I do not say that being silly. Like there is a war against our children. We can either participate in the safety of the children or we can turn a blind eye, keep our head in the sand, and that the predators love and appreciate.
Mhm.
They love uneducated children and they can sniff them out in a room. You put 100 kids in a room with a predator, the predator knows which children energetically even that they can go after. So the work that is to be done is for adults to work on their own comfort level and to work through their own stuff so that they can be a resource to our children. And when I say our children, I mean the entire community, right? If you're a coach, those are your kids. If you're a pastor, those are your kids. If you are a high school teacher, those are your kids. And we have to work together, share resources, and recommend therapists that helped you to friends who have unresolved trauma.
Well, and speaking about recommendations and sources, what was interesting to me also in navigating our situation was that you can get therapy for historical sex abuse. So there's people that are just, walking around carrying this shame, this lifelong shame, and have never had anyone to talk to about it. And just for them to know that there are resources out there for them. It doesn't have to be a new case. It can be a historical case to get that trauma therapy and help that you need. In BC, I know that in BC. I'm not sure of other places.
Yeah, we are very lucky with the resources that we have. The unfortunate part is some people know how to navigate the system and some people don't. And so some people have access to resources through victim services or organizations like that. Some people don't know about them. So then they suffer in silence. So we have
Mhm.
to seal that loop.
A lot of it comes down to self-worth too, like, as you get older, and that's you're a bullseye for people because you can tell when someone lacks self-worth. And again, that goes back to talking about the aftermath of sexual abuse, is that, the people who sweep it under the rug, or, they get a slap on the wrist and that their life goes on. They get to do the things. They get to live their life, but the person who has experienced the abuse has to carry that like a turtle with this weight of this trauma on their backs.
Mhm. I mean, I'm not going to be able to say that isn't true. That is true. My experience is that the victim suffers greatly and the person who's done the harm moves on. And I've seen that time and time again. But I think there are simple things that we can do that make a huge impact. When a child's been sexually harmed, it's important for the adults in that child's world to let them know it wasn't their fault, that their body is sacred, and that you're so sorry that happened to them and you're going to do everything you can to educate yourself and support them, because not all sexual abuse is violent, right? People don't want to leave, evidence. And sometimes the child is not even phased by it. Like they might say, someone did this. And it's the parent's response that elevates what happened to the child. And so if we can stay calm with the child and then go somewhere, if you think you're going to like strangle someone because of this information you've just received, go and process that by yourself with another adult, with a therapist, but not in front of the child. I want people to be in a neutral mindset when they're talking about this with kids. Like, this should never have happened to you. I'm so sorry. We're going to get some books. We're going to talk to some people. We're going to get some help. We're going to do our very best so that this never happens again. And it's never your fault.
Just the validation.
Kids need to hear that, because it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't have gone to the neighbor's house, or maybe I shouldn't have sat on Uncle Bob's lap, or that whole, okay, well, what was my role in this? The bottom line is, if kids learn from a young age that they're not supposed to touch anybody's body without their consent, and I'm talking like infancy on, we're going to be able to shift what's happening, because little kids understand that, like, oh, you're not supposed to touch someone without asking. And they're like, yeah, but like adults, like my parents make me kiss my grandma and I don't want, like, just on a very basic level, we can shift this by stating, do not touch somebody else's body unless they say, yes, I want to, please keep going, I like that, thumbs up, head nod. And if you don't hear anything that sounds like a yes, assume no.
Okay, so I have a question about that, Kerri, because a case that I became aware of was between a pubescent teen and a 5-year-old. And because he asked her if it was okay and she consented, he thought that it was okay.
Yeah, and I've heard that many times.
So it is normal for, a 10-year-old and a 10-year-old, or even a 10-year-old and maybe a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the big age difference and that piece of consent, because even the mom of this child who asked the 5-year-old, when she was speaking to the parent about the abuse, she didn't say, my son did this to your daughter. She said they participated in touching with one another.
The child did not participate in a consensual way because they don't even know what's happening. I mean, anytime there's more than a 2-year age difference, or if there's any sort of like power imbalance, right? A person who's 12 with another, say 10-year-old, but the 10-year-old is actually developmentally 5 or 6, like, we need to be worried about that. Here's the thing is, we have rules around who can share their body with who. The age of consent is 16. All children should know that anyone under 12 should not be touched by anyone. That is a sacred time period. When people turn 12, even though we don't encourage it, they could legally share their bodies with someone 12, 13, or 14, but the 14-year-old has to be less than 2 years older. Then it goes 13, could be with a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, but the 15-year-old has to be less than 2 years older. Then when you turn 14, a person could be with someone 12 to 19. The 12-year-old and the 14-year-old has to be less than 2 years age difference apart, and the 19 and 14-year-old. And then it goes 15 to 20. So a 15-year-old can be with a 13-year-old up to 20. Do we encourage that? No. Is it legal? Yes. So if someone is 14 and they ask a small child who has absolutely no clue what they're even asking to do, the 14-year-old, if they knew, hey, anybody under 12 is completely off limits.
Right. And the other question I have about that is, because kids are protected when with COCSA, it's hard because you see a child that is demonstrating some concerning behaviors,
Mhm.
and then you see that child at the playground, or you see that child at the pool, or you see that child having sleepovers at people's houses. Where is the responsibility on the parent to either keep their child home until they've gotten the proper resources, and exposing that child to potential future victims?
I mean, the onus falls on the parent for education. I feel like it would be incredibly neglectful if you knew that your teenage person was harming other kids. I mean, one of the things that I learned today was that the age to be the most concerned about is 14. This is like when the puberty hormones are there, accessibility of pornography and things. So we want to be making sure that kids have education from like infancy on, but particularly around the puberty years where they have all of these sexual feelings. They've got, testosterone in the body, and, females do harm children, but the majority of, the child on child sexual harm is happening male to male or male to female. So, yeah, I mean, if I had a young person that was sexually harming other people, would I let them go to the pool by themselves? No. Would I let them roam around the city by themselves? No. Would I let them go over to the next door neighbors unsupervised? No. But not all parents have that level of awareness around, like, you could be contributing to further child on child sexual harm by not educating your child and not increasing supervision. When you have someone over at your home, you should be in high traffic areas, particularly if you were someone who's harmed somebody else. Like, you're not going in the bedroom. You're not, closing the door. You're not being able to be in the closet or underneath the bed, or, where in the bathroom with somebody else or whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, for me, that's a red flag. The parent is not on it when they need to be educating and therefore protecting other people's children.
Back in the day, we had the village, right? We had like, oh, watch out for that, Uncle Tony. He's a little whatever. And I feel like we are spending so much time protecting people and not, because we're so scared of like liabilities and things like that. But as a parent watching somebody that is abusing children, not only being re-exposed to kids they've already abused, but like the parents babysitting them and having their child who was abused by this boy still remaining in contact. Because I talked to some relatives who were talking about their own SA as children, and one of the biggest slap in the faces for them was the fact that their parents or their providers kept them in contact with their abuser and didn't remove that contact.
Exposing a child to somebody who's harmed them when the parents knows that they've harmed them. I mean, I think there's strategies. I have met some brilliant people who, yes, we will allow, Uncle Bob to come to our family gatherings, and we put him in the center of the room and all eyes are on. We're not going to ostracize him. We are not developed enough as a family to set that level of restriction, but we're going to be watching him. And we're going to let the kids know, hey, we are not going to be alone with any of the adults in this room. You don't have to point out the specific person, but it's like, you can be alone with mom, you can be alone with dad or whoever you have. But in terms of the aunts and uncles and cousins or whatever, we're just going to be in a group setting.
That's the whole thing about like still including people, because that's where the line too is, okay, well, how much do we ostracize and push them out of society, which will just turn them into bigger monsters.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that mama bear instinct, because when we were dealing with our own abuse case, what was the most frustrating to me and other parents was the actions of the adults. When your family is doing all the things and making sure that you are educated, and then other families aren't doing the same things, like, where is the line too? Because you don't want to make the kids suffer, kids not being able to hang out with other kids because of decisions that parents are making.
I'm going to steer you towards website Consent Parenting. Rosalia focuses on how to get parents to be able to advocate at school level, at daycare levels, to be able to talk to other adults about what they feel is like appropriate education, safety, boundaries, that type of thing. And she even has scripts for people to be able to talk to people when they don't feel comfortable. So if you are dropping your child off on a play date somewhere, I think there should be conversations around, are they accessing movies? Are they accessing the internet? And one of the things that I do with families where there's child on child sexual harm is to create body safety agreements. So if you know that your child in a certain neighborhood plays with certain kids, you can get all of the families together, all the kids together, and talk about creating a list of agreements that people are going to make. And it could just be like, we're not putting our hands on people, including the private parts. When we do dress up, we keep our shirt on and our underwear on. We play in high traffic areas. So if everybody's on the same page, the kids know it, everybody signs, like you can make a big poster, everyone signs it, then when somebody breaks the agreement, someone's gonna report it. Might
Right.
not be the person it happened to. And then you have like more eyes than just your eyes. You have
Mhm.
other children and parents educated.
Well, that's kind of the silver lining with dealing with a sex abuse case within my family is it opened up the conversation. But it would be nice if it was ingrained in us in our education and in even with coaches and things like that, because even coaches that dealt with these kids, they didn't have education either. You know,
Yep.
saying things like it's childhood curiosity with a
Mhm.
pubescent teen and a 3-year-old, and that's somebody that's coaching our children. Are there any programs and things in line for coaches?
There are trainings. I'm gonna share them with you right now. So I would love people to take a look at a website called Darkness to Light because we need to shine the light on these dark areas. I would like people to look at Priority Kids. So prioritykids.ca, and then Culture Reframed, which is information for parents, coaches about pornography. So all three of those trainings. I mean, I don't think someone should be able to coach without mandatory training in this area because
Mhm.
coaches can have such a positive impact on, particularly like at higher level sports where, you know, we almost have like a God complex to, you know, if the person's good looking and they play a sport that's popular, they're basically getting a pass for some of their behavior, right? And we see that all the time.
Okay. When it comes to your safe touch workshops, if people can access those in person or even online, what are some tips for parents and strategies on just the very basics in safe touch?
Well, I would like to believe that everybody has $30. So my Body Smart books are $30, $8 shipping. If someone really couldn't afford one and they really desperately wanted one, I would mail one for free. All of my classes are sliding scale. I have pre recorded videos. My website's powerupeducation.com. In my free shop, there's resource recommendations. You can go to your public library. They all have books on body safety and body science. And you know, do what you need to do. Have those books scattered around the house. I also have a bunch of free resources in my shop under free resources about wiping, washing, and if you hurt yourself, there's lots of places. Follow Consent Parenting on Instagram. Follow Officer Gomez on Facebook. These are people that are really in the field that are they're not afraid of telling the truth and they do it with style. That's why I follow them because I'm like, oh, I wish I could be that blunt with people, but you know, people can't handle that from me because I'm female or whatever. But yeah,
Well, that's again going back to like not envying your position of what you
yeah,
do, but how important what you do is. And I would encourage you to just go go all in because
yeah.
the people that
I'm getting braver. I'm getting braver.
but
Yeah,
easy to say, but when you're put in the position that you're put in, and
yeah,
you have all these arrows coming in all
mhm,
directions, you can't please everybody.
yeah.
You intuitively know what you're doing is right and what the world needs. Thank you so much, Kerri, and I respect you so much for what you do.
My pleasure. Thank you so
Okay.
much.